Oh, well, here are two big contrasts. I forgot Daddy's life in Greenbush, where he would climb out the window and go and bring water to the elephants when the circus came to town and things like that. He also had a friend, he would lie in bed and uh, put twine around his big toe, and then the friend would come from someplace else, outside, and pull on the toe and wake him up so then he could. I always loved that thing. And the contrast between that small town life and those small town things. I mean, it was very much a Tom Sawyer, Huckleberry
Yeah.
Finn life that he had. That,
Right. And it was horse and buggy in those days.
Oh,
too.
yes,
Yeah.
yes. Though, actually, of course, that was it. But at one point, I think it was probably before he married Mother, but he was 12 years older than my mother, so he had had a lot of experience, and that's how he had had time to have all these various, move from one job to another, moving up and up and up the ladder and become very successful. So he was very successful by the time they'd married. But I love that story, the contrast, between the Tom Sawyer bringing up. And then here, Banana had said that she remembered when they were in Paris, they would always stay at the either Louis XV or whatever, the Louis the 16th hotel in Paris, which was, ritzier than the Ritz. And then something about a hunting lodge. I can't remember what she said about that. But they had this very glamorous life. And then when, so I told you about my first memory, and then my second memory happened after, happened back in Greenwich. And Banana had been taken, not my mother, Nana, had taken Banana to a dance class, and I even sort of remember kind of where it was off the post road, and there was a bunch of girls all dressed in little chiffony dance costumes, and there was a big pool of light. There was kind of a moss green carpet, and then this spotlight that came down on the carpet, making a big round circle, sort of a bright yellow circle, and some divine music playing. And my mother had just taken me along with her, and I was sitting on her lap, and I heard the music. I simply couldn't bear sitting still. So I broke loose and went out and was dancing around the pool, and it completely broke up the whole dance class. But that's truly, that everyone has always said I couldn't possibly remember the Bridge of Sighs thing, but
That's
this
another one, those clear.
But I couldn't have been much more than 2 or a little over 2. And you had to walk, obviously, and move around. And I moved around, and it was so embarrassing to everybody to have this creature. And it really broke up the whole dance class. Anyway,
In fits of laughter, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah. But, Anyway, my brother and sister had each gone to school. My brother went to Brunswick Academy, which is the best boys' school in Greenwich. And my sister went to the Greenwich Academy, which was sort of around the corner from Brunswick, and was the fancy girls' school. And so they had, Uncle John was 7 when I was born, and Banana was 5 when I was born. So he was probably about 9 or 10, and she was around 7 or 8 when the crash came. And what happened as it's hard to, because of course I never asked about any of these things. Do you need to go stretch again?
No, not at all.
You're being very foolish if you...
No,
okay.
I'm good.
I think I mean, my father's, the Fox brothers just completely, there was nothing. I mean, you know, everything dissolved.
Right.
So there was nothing there. He probably had made some bad investments. Well, the stock market just went push, and he lost everything. I mean, there were some people in Greenwich who had invested sufficiently well so that they didn't fall apart. But it was a time when all kinds of people were jumping out of windows and things. It was a terrible, terrible, terrible time.
That was 1929, right?
Yeah, 29, 30, 31. And at the time that the business completely collapsed, the man who had the power of attorney of all Dad's finances and everything absconded with all his funds to Europe and was
with your dad's funds. With your father's funds.
All my father's funds, completely. So he was completely wiped out. At that time, he had 2 operations. He had terrible kidney stones, and I guess there were terrible, terrible accounts of those operations. Going wrong, really terribly wrong, unbelievable pain, and terribly, terribly wrong. And afterwards, he didn't work for. Well, there was no work there. I mean, the business had collapsed and everything else, and
that was kind of the beginning of the Great Depression, wasn't it?
Oh yes, it was. Yeah, it was just terrible. I mean, bread lines, people not eating, whatever. I mean, it was really, really, really terrible.
And were there signs of it in Greenwich, Connecticut at all, or?
Not that I know of.
Yeah.
Though I'm sure there were plenty of people who lost their houses and things like that. But in general, people had. There was a lot of old money that had been very safely invested and things like that. And Daddy was somebody who had made his money. He wasn't, well, whatever. I really don't know all the logistics of all of that.
Details,
But anyway, he was quite ill, and I never heard it ever mentioned that way before, but my sister said he had a nervous breakdown. He had had these terrible operations. He'd had all his finances taken away, and no work, nothing, and he. Let's see. I was my brother had gone to Brunswick and to the academy, and because they were both good students and everything, they both continued going to these places on total scholarships. And when I came along at the age of 5, Mother had taught me to read, and she enrolled me in the Havemeyer School. It was the public elementary school in Greenwich. In all the years I lived in Greenwich, I never knew a single soul who went to a public school, because there were these very fine private schools in town, and the only people who went to public schools were, townies, were the service people or whatever. Anyway, she took me to Havemeyer School, and of course I was terrified. I do remember, I mean, I was always so painfully shy that it was pretty impossible. It reminds me, there's something about that shy thing I want to bring up, and I forget if I don't say it right away. Anyway, after one day of being totally miserable there, they wouldn't put me. They made me go into kindergarten, but I already knew how to read because Mother taught me how to read. And she was outraged by that. So she took me out of school and said that she would teach me at home. I don't even know if that was legal in those days.